morning, good afternoon, good evening. Just a quick response. We have got two images there. In 2022, just 4 years ago, Tendai BT was saying we need a 7-year national transition authority. And now he's saying I'll die defending the Constitution. Let me say here and now that any suggestion that amendment number 3 of the Constitution is seeking to create some form of national transition authority, 7-year national transition authority, which ZANU-PF itself has suggested, is nonsense. The argument that the regime has used was we need a longer period between elections because that will give time to those who are elected in positions of power and authority to implement their reforms. And that the country has been in constant election mode. Those two arguments are absolutely nonsensical. To start with, Zimbabwe is a failed state. Its economy is in shambles. ZANU-PF has been in power, not for 7 years, for 46 years. And yet it still wants to stay in power. So if they failed to develop the country in 46 years, they still want to believe they need more time. Let me be very clear on that matter. Amendment number 3 seeks to turn Zimbabwe, which is at the present moment a de facto one-party state dictatorship, to a de jure one-party state dictatorship. They are tired of rigging the elections. In fact, rigging the elections has proven to be more and more difficult as the nation became more and more restless for meaningful change. And the amendment seeks to water down the little voting rights the people still had to utterly meaningless. We've heard that now the amendment seeks to take away the people's right to vote for the president. They will vote for the members of parliament, and then the members of parliament will elect the president. The truth of the matter is, ZANU-PF has found it much easier to rig constituency elections than the national. That is why they want this change. In constituencies, rigging the election has been easy. You are only looking at securing majority out of 35 or so voters. Rigging must much easier. In any case, the party has the monopoly in the rural areas, where about 60% of the electorate are based. Rigging in the rural areas is fairly straightforward. They are guaranteed the 60%. So they will have 60% of the parliamentary votes and thus win the parliamentary vote. And then Parliament can elect the president. But rigging, as was the present position now, the national vote as in a presidential election has proven to be more and more difficult. Jealous Mawarire, in an interview with Mdarabi, revealed recently that in 2018, Mnangagwa only managed to get 32% of the national vote. And the army generals who had been behind the coup of 2017 decided that they were not going to allow the opposition to win the presidency. And so they orchestrated the rigging to top up from 32%. That wasn't an easy task. That is why we're having all this change now. That is the truth. So any suggestion that amendment number 3 is in any way or form trying to replicate the ideas that were put forward by those who supported the National Transition Authority is just nonsense. Amendment number 3 seeks to impose a de jure one-party ZANU-PF dictatorship. To come to the opposition, yes, we need a National Transition Authority or GNU, call it what you like. Because how else are we going to move from the present dictatorship to a democracy? We had the opportunity to implement the democratic reforms, which all those who supported the NTA are saying would be the number one task of that authority. During the GNU of 2008 to 2013, we failed, or rather MDC leaders failed to implement even one token reform. And this brings us back to the likes of Tendai Biti now saying, I'll die defending this present constitution. You were in the GNU. You failed to implement even one token reform during that time. You had the backing of SADC, and you failed to implement even one reform. You didn't have to climb any mountain to implement the reforms. You did not, because Mugabe bribed you with the E-class Mercedes-Benz for all the deputy ministers, the two prime ministers, and Prime Minister Tsvangirai himself. generous salaries all round. And for Save, a $4 million mansion. And the truth is only coming out now that Tendai Biti, Nelson Chamisa, Welshman Nguve, and all the other top brass MDC leaders got farms plus other benefits, cash. They were able to borrow money from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe for their projects. And no doubt many of them never repaid the full amount of what they borrowed. Just like what ZANU-PF guys were doing. So anyone who suggests that we need a national transition authority is absolutely right. We need it. But what we don't need is to have the same corrupt, incompetent leaders who failed to implement even one token reform during the last GNU. Anyway involved in that National Transition Authority. The people of Zimbabwe must wake up to the reality that we can't keep on repeating the same foolish mistakes over and over again. If Tendai Biti and company failed to implement even one token reform during the last GNU with the support of SADC, what makes you believe they'll implement any reforms now? The reason why we are in this mess is that they failed to implement the democratic reforms, that the constitution that they recommended to the nation in 2013 was weak and feeble. ZANU-PF emerged out of the 2008 to 2013 GNU with all its dictatorial powers intact, plus the bonus that this time they had the opposition leaders in their deep pockets. Ever since the GNU debacle, the MDC leaders have participated in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that by participating, they will be giving ZANU-PF legitimacy. They have participated nonetheless because they also knew that ZANU-PF was giving away a few gravy-train seats to entice the opposition to participate in the flawed elections, no matter how flawed the process got. This is why we are where we are. The people of Zimbabwe should be smart enough to realize that our political and economic crisis is a man-made problem. It's a man-made crisis. And it is ridiculous. They're the same people responsible for the crisis should be considered to be the ones who can provide the solution. They will never provide the solution. MDC Triple C leaders have been on the political stage for 26 years and counting. They've failed to implement even one token reform. because they are corrupt, incompetent, liars, and conmen. And for anyone at all, to still say, yes, let's entrust them to lead us during a crisis like now, is a clear sign that that individual has learned absolutely nothing. They've learned absolutely nothing from the events of the last 26 years. So I repeat, we need a national transition authority to get out of this crisis. And here is how we can get to that national transition authority. We should stop participating in flawed elections. If Chamisa had not conned 2 million people to participate in 2023 elections, I believe SADC and the AU, who were election observers and had condemned Zimbabwe's 2023 elections as flawed and illegal, they would have gone the extra step, the extra mile, and deny ZANU-PF legitimacy. But because millions of Zimbabweans had participated in those flawed elections, they could not do that. So what we need is to make sure that the next election, be it in 2028, or even if ZANU-PF manages to push through the amendment and postpone the parliamentary elections to 2030, we do not participate in those flawed elections. Because if we participate, we'll give ZANU-PF legitimacy again. And I can tell you now, the likes of Tendai Biti, Nelson Chamisa, Douglas Monzora, Lovemore Maduku, those people will participate in 2030 elections without even one token reform implemented. How do I know that? Because they have participated in the past elections with no reforms implemented. What has changed? Nothing. They are coming out and with a big song and dance about we are fighting to stop amendment number 3. This is just them trying to win the confidence of the Zimbabwean electorate. Amendment number 3, ZANU-PF is able to do it because it got legitimacy in 2023. Like it or not, by participating, you gave ZANU-PF legitimacy. And right now, they have control of all the institutions, parliament, the judiciary, ZEC, the police, the army. Even if the amendment, we were to get them to make sure that they agree to have a referendum before the amendment is passed, they can still get that amendment passed. Because in a referendum, unlike an election, there is no outside supervision. There is no need to produce a verified voters roll. ZANU-PF will prefer to face a referendum than to face an election. And if we go along with what people like Tendai Biti are telling us. I'll die for the Constitution. I'll climb every mountain, cross every valley to make sure that the referendum, the amendment does not pass. The truth of the matter is, if as long as you participate and ZANU-PF rigs it, you have given it legitimacy too. Taking it to the Constitutional Court, the regime to the Constitutional Court, this is a ZANU-PF court. If you go through that process, what you are saying is you have got confidence in that court. And whatever Fed decision they make, you have got to accept it. You cannot say this is a ZANU-PF corrupted court because you didn't get the judgment you want. We've gone through that before. We know ZANU-PF has got all the institutions to his side. They're all in the regime's deep pockets. What we need to do is make a conscientious decision that we cannot keep on participating in a flawed process. Because if you participate, you give it legitimacy. Why has people like Tendai Biti continued to participate in these flawed elections? It's because of greed. Why did he fail to implement even one token reform, even when they had the opportunity to do so? Again, greed. That greed has not gone away. The appearance of amendment number 3 has not opened the eyes of the opposition leaders. They are still as greedy as ever. They are just stringing the people along. And we should be smart enough to realize what's going on here and say no. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.